I needed a peaceful space to get away and focus on finishing my article. While browsing Airbnb, I stumbled upon a delightful house in Savannah, Georgia, and it seemed perfect. The photos showcased a gorgeous space filled with natural light pouring through tall windows, polished hardwood floors, and a cozy writing nook with a garden view. The reviews only reinforced my excitement. Guests raved about the attentive host and called the place a hidden gem. Without hesitation, I made the booking. A week-long work retreat in such a picturesque setting sounded like just the motivation I needed to wrap up my writing. But as it turned out, the charm didn't extend beyond the online listing. I arrived on a sweltering August afternoon, my car packed with everything I'd need: suitcase, laptop, and a folder crammed with notes. When I turned onto the street, my enthusiasm started to waver. The neighborhood wasn't at all what I'd envisioned. Instead of quaint houses and leafy sidewalks, I was surrounded by boarded-up buildings, graffiti-covered walls, and an unsettling number of police cars patrolling the area. I double-checked the address, hoping I'd made a mistake. But no, this was the right spot. The house itself looked just like the pictures, clean, bright, and inviting. I reassured myself that the area might just have a bit of character and rough edges. After all, I planned to spend most of my time indoors working anyway. After unpacking, I set up my laptop in the small writing corner and tried to get comfortable. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something wasn't quite right. Each glance out the window revealed people lingering on the sidewalks, their gazes fixed on the house. One time, I noticed a man pacing back and forth across the street, his eyes locked on my car. Then, one night, I was jolted awake by what sounded like muffled voices outside. When I cautiously peeked through the curtains, I spotted two figures standing on the sidewalk, gesturing toward the house. They seemed unaware of my presence and left after a few minutes, but the encounter left me uneasy. I tried to convince myself they were just passing by, but the tension only grew the next night. Around 11 p.m., while I was finishing some work, a faint thud broke the silence. It sounded like something hitting the side of the house, followed by absolute quiet. I checked outside, but everything appeared normal. Still, the creeping feeling that I wasn't truly alone wouldn't leave me. By the fifth night, the atmosphere felt heavier. As I worked at my laptop, the neighborhood was eerily silent, so quiet it made every creak and rustle feel amplified. That's when I heard it, a faint scratching noise. Initially, I assumed it was an animal, but the sound was deliberate, like someone testing the window frame. My chest tightened as dread crept in. I moved cautiously toward the front window, making sure not to make any noise, and peeked through the blinds. Standing there, hunched over the glass, was a figure with their hands pressed against the window. My heart raced as I ducked down quickly, trying to steady my breathing. Gripping my phone, I crawled to a corner of the room where I couldn't be seen. My hands trembled as I dialed 911. Quietly, I told the dispatcher. Someone's trying to break into my house, and gave her the address. "Stay on the call," she said in a steady voice. "Officers are on their way." Every second felt like an eternity, dragging on endlessly. The scratching grew louder, followed by a muted thump, as though someone was trying to pry the window open. I held my breath, gripping a hefty book tightly in my hands as if it could protect me. Then, everything went silent. Peeking outside again, I saw that the figure had vanished. A few minutes later, blue and red lights lit up the street. When two officers arrived and knocked on the door, I let them in, still trembling. They checked the property but found only fresh scratch marks on the window frame and footprints leading toward the back fence. "Looks like someone was trying to break in," one of them stated. "Maybe they thought no one was home," I said, my voice shaky. "But this isn't the first time I've felt like I'm being watched." The officers suggested I find somewhere else to stay for the night. They offered to file a report and assured me they'd increase patrols in the area. As they left, one of them glanced around the street and muttered, "You're brave, staying here alone." The next morning, I called the host. He answered cheerfully, but his tone quickly changed as I described what had happened. "This area has some quirks," he said vaguely. "Quirks?" I snapped. "Someone tried to break in last night. Why didn't you disclose the crime in your listing?" After a pause, he admitted, "It's happened a few times before, but it's just part of the neighborhood's charm, you know." Furious at his casual response to such a serious situation, I ended the call. I packed up my belongings and left that afternoon, angry and disappointed at his disregard for his guests' safety. I contacted Airbnb about the incident, providing photos of the scratch marks along with a copy of the police report. They refunded my stay and assured me they'd look into the host, but the memory of that experience still lingers. Now, whenever I travel, I make it a point to research not only the property, but also the surrounding area. What appeared to be a dream rental turned into an experience I'll never forget. I worked some seriously long hours as a nurse, and after what felt like the 100th exhausting shift in a row, I decided I needed a break. Not just a quick nap or a day off. I wanted to get away, recharge, and remind myself that life existed beyond hospital walls. That's how I ended up booking a cabin in Asheville, North Carolina. The listing promised solitude, stunning mountain views, and peace, which was exactly what I needed. The host, Alan, seemed friendly in his messages. He welcomed me to the property, said I'd fall in love with the cabin, and let me know I could text him if I needed anything. "Relax and enjoy," he wrote, signing off with a smiley face. He seemed so authentic that I didn't see a reason to doubt him. The cabin sat on the edge of a hill, surrounded by woods with floor-to-ceiling windows. It was perfect. The air smelled like pine, and the quiet was almost deafening after the constant beeping and chatter of the hospital. I spent the first evening curled up on the couch with a book, listening to the faint sounds of nature. I could finally take a proper breath for the first time in weeks. The next morning, Alan texted to ask how I'd slept. I thought it was a nice gesture and replied, "Great, the bed's super comfy. Thanks for checking in." He didn't respond, and I went about my day. I spent most of it hiking nearby trails, snapping photos, and marveling at how alive the world felt compared to the sterile monotony of my job. When I returned to the cabin in the late afternoon, another message from Alan popped up. "Hope you enjoyed the trails. The view from the porch is incredible at sunset." It felt a bit weird. I hadn't mentioned hiking in our earlier messages, and I hadn't told him I planned to spend the day exploring. Maybe it was just a lucky guess. I mean, what else do people do around here? I tried to forget about it and focused on making dinner, distracting myself from overthinking. By the third day, Alan's messages started to feel intrusive. They weren't overtly creepy, but they had this strange specificity that made me pause. "Did you get a chance to try out the rocking chairs on the porch yet? They're my favorite spot for coffee in the morning." One read. Another said, "The fireplace is great on chilly nights. Bet it feels cozy now." I hadn't mentioned using the porch or lighting the fireplace in my updates. The cabin was small, so it wasn't exactly hard to figure out what I might be doing, but something about his messages felt like he was narrating my actions as they happened. It made me self-conscious, like I was being watched. That evening, as I was settling in with a movie, another text came through. "The couch looks comfortable, doesn't it?" I stared at my phone, feeling my stomach churn. That wasn't a guess. I was sitting on the couch right then, a blanket draped over me and a mug of tea in my hand. I hadn't mentioned this to anyone, let alone Alan. I looked toward the large windows that wrapped around the cabin. It was pitch black outside, the glass reflecting the cozy interior like a mirror. But somewhere beyond the darkness, I imagined someone standing just out of sight watching. I made an effort to let it go. Maybe Alan had a weird sense of humor, or maybe he was just overly familiar with his own property and made a lucky guess. Still, I decided to respond. "Thanks for checking in," I typed. "Everything's fine here, really enjoying the stay." After that, it was difficult to relax. I avoided looking at the windows, afraid I might see someone outside. When I finally crawled into bed, my phone clutched in my hand like a comforting presence. I woke up around 2 a.m. to a noise. It sounded eerily similar to someone walking on loose gravel, and I told myself it was just an animal. Raccoons, deer, maybe even a bear. It was the woods, after all. I held my breath, my heart thudding loudly as I tried to listen. The sound stopped, and the silence that followed seemed to smother the room. I didn't dare move. I stayed frozen in bed, gripping the blanket tightly and staring at the bedroom door, expecting it to swing open. Minutes passed, then an hour. Finally, exhaustion won, and I drifted off again. In the morning, I tried to convince myself it was just an animal, but as I sipped my coffee on the porch, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. I decided to check the area around the cabin, hoping a logical explanation would calm my nerves. That's when I noticed the footprints, leading from the tree line to the windows on the side of the cabin. My chest tightened as I followed them. The prints stopped near the porch, right beneath the window where I'd sat on the couch the night before. Whoever had made them had stood there just outside the glass, while I was inside, completely unaware. I ran back inside, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I picked up my phone to call Alan, demanding an explanation. But before I could dial, another text came through. "I hope you're finding everything to your liking. Let me know if there's anything I can do to make your stay more comfortable." Something inside me snapped. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a coincidence. Alan had been here, watching me, and he wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I packed in a frenzy, shoving clothes into my suitcase. I didn't care if I left things behind. I just needed to get out. Throwing my bag into the car, I started the engine and sped down the narrow dirt road, looking nervously at the rearview mirror the entire way. When I reached a gas station with cell service, I called Airbnb and reported everything. The texts, the footprints, the noises in the night. They assured me they'd investigate and offered a full refund. I drove straight home. A week later, a representative from Airbnb followed up. They'd removed Alan's listing and banned him from the platform. I learned through a friend in law enforcement that Alan had been reported before for similar behavior. In another case, a guest had caught him creeping around outside late at night. I thought I was careful, booking a highly rated property with glowing reviews, but none of that mattered when the host was the threat. Even now, months later, I can't book a rental without scrutinizing every detail. I always check the reviews, the locks, the windows. The thought of being watched, of someone standing just out of sight, has turned every vacation into a careful calculation of trust and risk. You never really know who's on the other side of that friendly text. As a photographer, the location can make all the difference for a successful project. So when I rented a house in Denver this past March, I was seeking a comfortable space to unwind after long days of exploring the city with my camera. The Airbnb listing seemed perfect, reasonably priced, cozy, and situated in a peaceful neighborhood. The host described the home as a 2-story property with a basement that was listed as vacant and used only for storage. It sounded just right. The house itself had plenty of charm, with its wooden floors, retro-style kitchen, and an inviting couch that felt like it was made for relaxation. For the first 2 days, everything was normal. My routine consisted of morning photo shoots, evenings spent editing, and nights falling asleep to the gentle hum of the radiator. It was exactly the escape I had hoped for, until it wasn't. On the 3rd night, while working late on my laptop, I heard a faint noise that made me pause. It sounded like movement coming from below me. Initially, I dismissed it as the radiator making strange noises, but the sound wasn't mechanical. It was uneven, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. I stopped typing and listened carefully, trying to shake off the unease. Maybe it was just the house settling, or perhaps a neighbor. The listing had clearly stated the basement was empty, so I convinced myself it was nothing and moved on. But the next night, it happened again, and this time, there was no mistaking it. I was in the kitchen reheating leftovers when I heard the distinct creak of wood under pressure. My heart started racing. I paused the microwave and stood completely still, straining to hear. The sound came again, followed by what seemed like a muffled thud. I struggled to rationalize it. Maybe it was a tree branch brushing against the house or some animal trying to sneak in. But this noise came from directly below me. My eyes shifted to the basement door at the end of the hallway. It was shut, and the padlock hung loosely from its latch. Why was the padlock unlocked? The next morning, I sent a text to the host, mentioning the strange noises I'd been hearing. His reply was quick, but dismissive. Old houses make all kinds of sounds, nothing to worry about. The way he spoke so casually rubbed me the wrong way, but I didn't push it. That evening, I tried to focus on editing photos, but the noises started again, this time louder. It wasn't just shuffling now. I could hear movements, like someone pacing. I grabbed a broom and approached the basement door. My hand trembled as I turned the handle, but the door wouldn't budge. It was stuck. I leaned closer, trying to listen through the wood. That's when I heard a low, raspy cough. I stumbled back. Someone was down there. I spent the rest of the night barricaded in the bedroom, the door locked, the broom still by my side. When morning came, I called the host again, this time demanding answers. "Are you sure the basement is unoccupied?" I asked. "Well," he hesitated. "Technically, there's someone down there, but he's harmless." "What?" My voice rose. "You said it was empty." "He's a long-term tenant," the host admitted. "He's been there for years. I don't include it in the listing because it scares people off, but I promise, he keeps to himself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I hung up, furious and terrified. Whoever was in the basement hadn't been keeping to himself. He'd been moving around at night, listening through the vents and possibly trying to get upstairs. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bags, planning to leave first thing in the morning. But as I was zipping up my suitcase, I heard the faint creak of the basement door. My blood ran cold. Slowly, I crept down the hall, peeking around the corner. The door was slightly open. I held my breath, backing away. The thought of confronting whoever was down there was too much. Instead, I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, pointing it toward the door. A shadow shifted just beyond the threshold. "Get out!" I shouted, my voice shaking. "I'm calling the police." The shadow didn't move at first. Then slowly, the door creaked shut. I heard the sound of footsteps retreating down the stairs, followed by silence. I didn't wait for morning. I grabbed my bags, jumped in the car, and sped off into the night. The next day, I filed a report with Airbnb, detailing everything that had happened. They refunded my stay and assured me they would investigate the host. I didn't follow up after that, so I don't know what happened to the host. But to this day, I can't stay in a house with a basement. I'd stayed in Airbnbs before, but I'd always gone for private rentals, entire apartments or small houses to myself. This time though, I decided to save some money. I'd be in Austin for just a few days for a marketing seminar, and I didn't think much about booking a shared Airbnb. The listing described the host as friendly and respectful, and mentioned that guests might share the space with others occasionally. It sounded fine to me. The house itself was modest, but it had a warm, inviting feel. A single-story home with a front porch, a small garden, and a welcoming yellow door. When I arrived, my roommate for the week greeted me at the door. She introduced herself as Kelly. She was tall and thin, with long, dark hair and a laid-back vibe. At first look, she seemed perfectly normal, maybe a bit quirky. Her clothes were mismatched, and she had a habit of looking at the ceiling as if she were lost in thought. The host wasn't there, but that didn't seem unusual. Kelly mentioned that the homeowner often rented out the property while away for work and relied on guests to respect the space. After some casual chit-chat, I headed to my room to settle in and unpack. Later that evening, I set up my laptop in the dining room to catch up on emails. In the living room, Kelly sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by an array of candles. There was no TV or music, just the soft glow of flickering flames and a notebook in her lap. When she noticed me glancing her way, she smiled. "Don't mind me," she said. "I'm just aligning my energy for the evening." I wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but figured it wasn't anything to worry about. She laughed. "You probably think I'm strange. It's fine. I get that a lot. I'm a witch." "A witch?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yep, but not the broomstick kind," she replied with a wink. "More like rituals and energy work. Totally harmless, I promise." I gave her an awkward smile and turned back to my laptop, not sure how to respond. To each their own, I thought. As long as there weren't any goat sacrifices happening, I could deal with a few candles. Over the next few days, Kelly's unusual habits became more apparent. She often hummed quietly to herself, a low tune that didn't resemble any song I'd ever heard. She spent hours in the backyard speaking in a language I couldn't identify while arranging rocks into intricate patterns. One time, I saw her sprinkling what looked like salt along the edges of the house. When she noticed me watching, she said, "It's for protection. Keeps negative energy out." The thing that intrigued me the most, though, was her suitcase. She kept it in the living room instead of her bedroom and never opened it. The old, worn-out piece of luggage had peeling leather and a rusted clasp. Eventually, my curiosity got the better of me, and I asked her about it. "Oh, that's just my tools," she explained. "Everything I need for my practice." Her tone made it clear she didn't want to elaborate, so I let it go. On my final night, I returned home after dinner to find the house unusually quiet. Kelly, was normally in the living room with her candles or jotting in her notebook, was nowhere to be seen. Her belongings, her suitcase, the candles, even the rocks from the backyard were still there, but there was no sign of her. I checked the kitchen, the bathroom, even the backyard. Nothing. Her bedroom door was wide open, revealing an empty, unmade bed. By this point, I was more confused than concerned. Maybe she'd stepped out for a late-night walk or a last-minute errand. Still, it was strange that she hadn't taken her things. I went to bed. The house felt different without her presence. Something felt off, heavier somehow. The next morning, Kelly was still nowhere to be found. Worried, I decided to message the host and let them know about the situation. Their reply came quickly but left me rattled. "I'm sorry, but I don't know who you're talking about," the host wrote. "There shouldn't be anyone else staying there." What? No one else? Kelly had been here all along. We'd shared conversations, meals, even laughed about her quirky routines. She wasn't just a figment of my imagination. My eyes fell on her suitcase, the last trace of her presence, sitting alone in the living room like an unanswered question. Against my better judgment, I unlatched the clasps and opened it. The smell hit me immediately, a strange mix of old leather, damp earth, and an unsettling metallic tang. Inside there were no clothes or toiletries, just a collection of odd items. A bundle of dried herbs, a cracked mirror, a small vial filled with a reddish liquid, and a stack of handwritten notes covered in symbols and phrases I couldn't decipher. Panicked, I slammed the suitcase shut and stepped back. Who was Kelly? Why was the host denying her existence? With trembling hands, I called the host directly. Their tone was calm, yet firm. "I swear, I haven't rented to anyone else. You're the only guest I approved. If someone else is staying there, you need to leave immediately and contact the authorities." That was all I needed to hear. I hurriedly packed my belongings, constantly glancing at every shadow and corner in the room. Was Kelly still here somewhere, hiding? Had this all been some kind of twisted game? That night, I stayed at a hotel, but the sense of unease stuck with me like a dark cloud. The next day, I reported everything to Airbnb. The strange rituals, the host's denial, the suitcase. They promised to investigate, but I never heard back. To this day, I still don't know who Kelly really was or what her intentions were. All I know is that I'll never stay in a shared Airbnb again. The idea of someone like her slipping into my life, even for a short time, still sends shivers down my spine. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.